Everybody is dealing with something. And that's really why I want to share these stories, because the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them, and hopefully we can help, get through their own struggle.
Yeah, no, it's super simple to do a podcast. You basically just need a couple of microphones and sit down and talk for a little while. It's fine. Literally, like, I'm a mom. I understand if she cries or whatever. We're just talking. So it's like, you know what I mean?
We're constantly publishing new content. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.
Okay, cool. I want to welcome you guys to the Tattoos of My Soul podcast. I am very happy to have you on, and I've got Charlie and Faith Russell today. And it's really interesting because we don't know each other, really. I mean, we've only spoken one time before this, but it's really interesting how I came to know you. And that's by the fact that somebody in the prayer group that I have on Facebook posted your story. And obviously I'm going to let you kind of go into that here in just a few minutes. But I just wanted to give our listeners kind of the backstory so they understand how we even got in contact with each other. So on Facebook, if you don't know, I've got a private prayer group that, people join, and that group is all about just, obviously prayer and encouraging, and we do prayer requests, and we do a lot of uplifting, motivating, encouraging discussion on a daily basis usually. And somebody, Rita Getz, in fact, who's part of the prayer group, posted your story, which now that I've kind of, been reading a little bit about you guys, I realize it's from the Facebook page, Faith, that you set up, which I'm going to let you talk about in just a few seconds. But apparently you don't even know Rita. I assumed that you guys knew each other.
But we're really thankful for her. Thank you, Rita.
Exactly.
Thank you, Rita.
Yeah, you don't even know her. I just assumed she must know these people. They must maybe even be related, because she literally was posting your story all the time.
Wow, that's so cool.
People in the prayer group started praying for you and got very engaged in what you guys were going through. And so after a while, once you kind of came out of the situation you were in, which you're going to tell everybody about, I reached out to you and said, hey, let's get together and do a podcast, and you agreed. So basically, in a nutshell, that is how we have gotten to know each other just a little bit. And I think it's so awesome because, God just opens doors. He gets you connected with the people that you need to talk to and you need to, share with. And without the prayer group, I wouldn't know you guys. I wouldn't know your story and what God did for you. So I think it's so awesome.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for it. I've been so blown away by how many people were praying for me.
Yeah.
And for my family.
Yeah.
I'd hear stories all the time of somebody from across the country even who was sharing my stuff on Facebook, and I saw so-and-so share your post, and I've been praying for you. And I'm convinced that what happened to me was a testimony to the power of prayer and the power of God.
Yes,
God is
I
good.
would agree.
God is powerful.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So why don't you guys, I'm just going to let you kind of tell the listeners what you've been through the last really year. It's been quite a story.
Yeah, I mean, the short of it is, sometimes I tell stories really shorter than they are. The short of it is, I got COVID, and I got pneumonia real bad, had to go to the hospital. And it kind of got worse in the hospital, and I wound up being in the hospital for 3 months.
Wow.
And my daughter was born, our daughter was born while I was in the hospital.
And when he got diagnosed, he got COVID in July, end of July, and I got diagnosed. I was 38 weeks pregnant at the time. Amazingly, a miracle. One of the miracles, I didn't get it, but I was kind of quarantined away from him, was kind of taking care of him. I'm actually a nurse, so I was kind of his nurse, but still had to mask and glove up, take care of him, and he just kind of got worse. 3 ER visits later, he ended up being admitted because his oxygen was 75%. And normal oxygen is 95 to 100% for reference, so not good. So got admitted to the ICU on oxygen, and for 2 weeks kind of went back and forth with this high flow oxygen, they call it. And a week into that, our daughter was born. I was induced because she had some her own like health issues. Thankfully, she was born healthy. But it was, very scary. And then
Yeah, I had
2 weeks later.
actually had to FaceTime into the birth.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
Wow.
so what she was about to get to is that I wound up going through this process called ECMO, which she can tell you more about. But thankfully she was born before I went through
Yeah.
all that. But I did have to FaceTime into the birth, and I remember like watching on my phone the
Yeah. So okay, so just to understand. Okay, so you get diagnosed with, or you get a positive result for COVID around, I think, like the end of July last year. Is that right?
Yes.
And then literally a couple weeks after that, you're on a ventilator. Like it
Exactly,
goes
yeah.
downhill really quickly.
yeah.
2 weeks into.
Yeah.
being in the
Were you
hospital.
immediately sick, or were you kind of? I mean, did your body immediately, get pretty bad, or at first were you like, I'm going to be fine?
It was in stages. Like first I had some stomach problems, and I was like, well, I've got some stomach problems. I probably should get tested. And I remember like that scary feeling when they tell you that you test positive, like you have no idea how that's going to turn out.
Hard day.
But
Yeah.
and then I was thinking like, oh, our baby's probably going to be born like next week. But I was like, well, this
Really
is going to be all
bad
right.
timing.
Like, yeah.
Really bad timing.
But I was trying to put this brave face on and tell Faith like, well, like I'm young. It's probably not going to be that bad, and we're going to be quarantined for a few days, and I'll get over it. And
Like normally you quarantine for a week
be-
and then.
and
by
that wound
then,
up
hopefully Charity will wait that long. Or daughter.
that wound up not being true. But,
Right. Right.
and,
Yeah.
I started just getting worse and worse, and I had. Did you take me to the hospital first?
Yeah, I
She
moved-
took me. I went to the hospital 3 times. And the first time, they checked me out and they said, "You're fine." Sent me home. And then a second time, again, I was getting real bad. And I was like, Faith, I really think I need to go back to the hospital. So our pastor actually came by and drove me to the hospital.
At that time, I think they discovered he did have pneumonia, but they were like,
Yeah.
"You're not bad enough that we can't keep you here, so go home."
Maybe it may have been
Okay.
something like that. But they're like, watch him, make sure his oxygen doesn't drop. And
It was 2 days later.
my brothers happened to come up to visit at that time.
They came to take care of him so that I could go stay with my mom because at any moment I could be having
Yeah,
a baby.
That's
and I
right.
couldn't
Right.
That's right.
be
That's
here
what
to
it
take care of
was.
him. And it was that
Right.
night that they flew in. And Charlie called me. I can't breathe.
It was like in the middle of the night. I was like, I'm having a really hard time breathing. I can't. I can tell my O2's not high enough.
Yeah.
So my brother drove me to the hospital, and I got out of the car, and it's probably a 100-foot walk from the car to the office desk chair, and I like barely made it to the chair.
Wow. And how old are
And
you? How old
I'm
are you?
27.
Yeah.
27, and I was
26.
totally healthy.
Wow.
I didn't have any health problems, and but my brother walked in and said, "I'm not taking him home." And thankfully, they decided to
At that point, it's like
admit me to the
emergent.
ICU.
Okay, yeah, you're
but my
finally bad
O2 was
enough.
like in the 70s at that point. It was really bad.
Wow.
So, and I spent a few days in ICU, and at first it looked like I was maybe making a recovery until one day they took my x-rays, looked down on my x-ray and said, "Oh," and that's not really something you want to hear your doctor say after they take an x-ray.
When they're looking at an x-ray. Oh.
Clearly I was getting worse. And then one day it
And
got,
so what did they see when they were looking at the x-ray?
I guess my lungs were just almost full of pneumonia.
Full of
and
yeah.
Normally,
okay.
it's kind of you can see, and it was just like
very
black,
cloudy.
like you
Yeah.
couldn't. There was no airflow. That's when he got so bad that they had to put him on
Wow.
the ventilator because no oxygen was getting into his lungs. They were so stiff.
Yeah.
And then normally on the ventilator is when, it's scary to go on the ventilator anyways, but you hope that it's going to help your oxygen levels. And it did not, like all night long. Yeah. I mean, even that day hearing he was being put on the vent was a terrible day. Like you're so worried.
I'm
you're so
sure.
stressed.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
Well,
But-
I mean, honestly, a lot of the times when you hear people they're going on the vent, they don't come off the vent,
Yeah,
and it doesn't
exactly.
end well.
That was my
And
fear.
It's
for
just
sure.
Yeah, I'm
very
sure.
unlikely.
Exactly, that's
And
what
then-
you
You
were
know,
thinking.
I remember that being my fear was thinking if I wind up going on the vent, I knew that there was a smaller chance of me surviving. And by this point, Faith took a bunch of pictures of Charity and she put them on my hospital wall.
So by this point, Charity's been born.
Charity's been born. She's been born for a few days, and I'm trying really hard. I'm like extra motivated to try to get better now, right?
Yeah. Were you guys in the same hospital, different floors,
were.
or
Yes,
different?
yeah.
That's what
She
I
was just a
thought.
floor,
Yeah.
floor below me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when I was sitting there looking at the hospital wall, and there's just one day I just took this huge corner for the worst. And my oxygen just kept dropping and dropping. I could not breathe enough to get my oxygen up.
Yeah.
And I remember just like looking at that wall thinking like, I got to get better for my little girl. I got to get better for my little girl. Mm-hmm. God, please help me get better for my little girl. And they came in because it had finally been long enough that my oxygen wasn't high enough for a period of time. And he said, hey, we got this new process called ECMO that we use to treat people who've got your case this bad. Are you willing to go on it? And I was so like, it was so weird because I was like so out of it already because I'd been in the hospital already for I think almost 2 weeks, and they'd been pumping me through steroids and meds, and I had been on low oxygen for a while. I was like, oh, I need to call my dad or somebody. And my dad was able to put a brave face on and was like, well, Charlie, this is probably a wise decision, to go through it.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty scary feeling, but
What exactly is that treatment that they
So
did?
It's
Yeah,
kind
it's
of like a
not-
heart-lung bypass. So
Okay.
he had these two, like he's got scars like this big cannula, they call it. It's like it's pretty thick, this tube. One going up in his groin and one coming into his neck, and it oxygenates the blood for you. So it pulls the blood out of his body and then brings it back into his body oxygenated, so that his
Wow.
lungs aren't
it
having to
like
do
gives
the work.
oxygen into your blood for you. Is that basically what it does?
But
Okay.
That's crazy.
Well, kind of, yeah. But yeah, he was going back. He was that whole night. They were calling me all night saying his oxygen was like still really low. Like they couldn't get it up. They don't know what more we could do. We were waiting on an ECMO bed, but there's like a lot of
And
criteria.
Meanwhile,
to get
just so you
ECMO.
know, once I said yes, it was like lights out. Like they gave me
Yeah.
something to sedate me.
Yeah.
Sedated
Yeah.
and paralyzed him.
And I
from
didn't
this
remember
moment
anything
forward,
for a long time,
he
but
doesn't
for
remember.
her,
Wow.
it was a really scary moment. And you'll have to tell
Right.
me more about what that was like.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're calling me all night saying his oxygen, and then they're waiting on this ECMO bed, but there's this criteria to get ECMO, and normally you have to maybe be on the vent for so long, but then you can't be too sick, but you can't be not sick enough. Like, it's just like,
Sure.
it's a big deal to get an ECMO bed. So they keep saying, we're trying to work on getting one. I actually happen to work at a hospital down in Nashville, and so that morning I messaged like my manager, and she like was reaching out to the team. We had like all kinds of people trying to get connections to get an ECMO bed, and I think
Yeah.
that was one factor that kind of helped actually working there. Like they said, you're part of the family, so it was kind of a priority. And then we had a friend that knew one of the like doctors there too, so we had kind of all these ins. So it was just
Yeah.
kind of a miracle that it was like about almost 24 hours later an ECMO bed opened up. But without ECMO, he would not have survived. 'cause,
Yeah,
like,
well,
his
that
oxygen
24
was not
hours was a
going up.
really scary time for all of them because,
Sure.
from what I understand, like they basically at one point they called
That
the
too, yeah.
family to say like, hey, he's probably not going to make it.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And
About 12 hours in.
My dad, I think, even has this dramatic story where he said like they wouldn't let him in to come see me because of all the COVID restrictions, and he was like, they just called me to tell me to.
Yeah, they had called
To-
me that morning. He happened to be flying
Yeah.
on a plane from Florida, and they called me in. I didn't even quite put it together. Like, they're calling me, and they're like, we can put you in all the gear, and you can go in. And at the time, I'm holding my, I think, 1.5-week-old, like a mess that night. I'd gotten an hour's sleep
Yeah.
because I was just all night crying, praying, answering
Right.
phone calls. Like, I was like, I don't think I can mentally handle it. Like, I'd probably walk in the room and like pass out. So
Right. Well, obviously, Charlie, you were the one that went through this physically and you were dealing with the illness yourself. But like Faith, I cannot, I have
Yeah.
2 kids and I think about
It was, in a lot of ways, it was worse for her than it was for me.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that, but the mental state that you're in, the mental, emotional state that you're in when you're just had a baby, it's already, you're kind of a mess emotionally,
Yep,
you're
yep.
crying and there's all kinds of things that happen. And then on top of that, you know, you're trying to care for your newborn, but now you're thinking that your husband, who's 26 years old, might not even make it, and you are, you know, probably forced with the reality of looking at like what life's going to look like raising your baby on your own.
Absolutely.
So like, what was that like for you? Obviously it was terrifying, but how did you get through that? What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely like one of the worst days of my life. Like,
Sure.
I literally had like phone PTSD. Anytime the phone would call, you know, I'd be so worried like to find out, because at the time, you know, he was in isolation, so we couldn't see him, so I was relying on the nurses for those updates. And normally I'm the one calling them. This time they're the ones calling me, so, you know, that's not fun when when they're so bad. But yeah, all night long, I think when I first heard he might be put on the vent, I kind of immediately went to Facebook just asking for prayers. That was like my kind of first response. Like, anytime I'm going through something hard is pray. I'm going to go to God. And so I probably never prayed so hard in my life, like all night long. Like I said, I maybe slept an hour, but just praying and like crying out to God, like, you know, but it's raw prayers, like, God, please don't take my husband, like, please don't make me a single mom, like, and of course you're thinking of those things and what that'd be like, and all the thoughts that you never want to think are going through your head, like, you know, we never even talked about, like, what would he want at his funeral, like, and I'm just thinking of those things, but still just praying. And then, you know, we'd get another phone call and be like, you know, he's not doing too great. And so my mom was actually with me, and my best friend Rebecca were in the house, so that was good, you know, that I was not alone. They'd call, and then I just immediately like put on like worship music or something. Like, I think by 12 hours into it, like, there were barely any tears left to cry because I'd been crying all night. And just my friend actually took a photo of me and my mom. I'm holding Charity in my arms. Me and my mom are just laying on the bed. I've got my phone on my chest, and we're just listening to worship music and just praying and listening to that. Like, you just kind of have to get your mind a little off that. I mean, as well as you can, but just like, but yeah, it was hard, but just praying and kind of seeking God, and just like, as much as I want him, I also want God's will. And so just putting it into his hands, like praying that I get to keep him on this earth, but also surrendering. Just having to surrender that.
Absolutely.
That was one of those moments where it's so hard. The only thing you can do is pray. You know, and
just give it to God
and pray hard. And about the only other thing you could do, I guess, is reach out for emotional support.
Right. And that I was going to ask you, what made you have the idea or decide to create the Facebook group, because you guys have like 10,000 followers on that group. And I was reading, Christian Standard did an article with you guys, and they were saying literally people all across the country didn't even know you, were praying for you. I mean, obviously that's how it made, you guys are in Tennessee, that's how it made it to me here in Ohio, just by people sharing. And so what was that moment, Faith, where you were like, I'm going to put this on Facebook, you know, I'm going to create this group?
I've been posting some like personal updates, but I didn't have a group yet. And it was, I think, then that following night that he got put on ECMO, and my friends were here. Actually, one of our friends drove up that day to kind of be support for me, and we were talking that night, and I was like, you know, I think I want to make a page, like, just to kind of share a journey. And at that point, I kind of realized, okay, this is going to be longer than we thought. Like, this is going to be a road to recovery, like I named the page. And then kind of also speaking, hopefully in faith, that he's going to recover. But I just, like, I know so many people were interested in his parents, and his grandparents were both pastors of a church, and like his dad's pastor at a church. And so I just knew there's like kind of a big community of people that would kind of want to follow along in that. Like you said earlier, like, I believe in the power of prayer, and it was like more people praying, and that, you know, is huge and matters to God. And so it's like, you know what? And my friends were like, yeah, you should do it. And so I was definitely not expecting it to blow up like it did. I was like, you know, maybe 1,000, like that's quite a lot. But I kind of posted that night, and it just kind of blew up. I think within a couple days we had like almost 3 to 5,000. I can't quite remember now, but like it grew quickly. I was like, it was amazing. Like, I even have grandparents, and my dad are actually pastors and missionaries too. So kind of it just went out to, like, everyone was sharing it. So it went out to churches, like, not even in the U.S., but overseas, and in Ireland and UK and Australia and Japan.
Wow.
Like, it was incredible.
That is amazing.
There's something
and I think
really
too,
powerful. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just going to say, I think one of the reasons, obviously, it spread the way it did is because you guys are just, I mean, you're normal people dealing with this heavily traumatic situation. And there was probably a lot of people that were relating to you. I mean, everybody that we know now really has been touched by COVID in some way, some more serious than others.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people were probably looking at your story being like, that could totally be somebody I'm related to.
Right.
Yep.
And I
then
think
many
that's
times it
probably,
is.
yeah,
And
well,
we
exactly.
We see posts
why
all
they
the
did
time
that.
of people saying, "Hey, pray for my son. He's in the ICU battling
Yeah.
COVID." Or there was somebody posted just the other day of this kid who got pneumonia, who got COVID right about the time that I did, and he's still in the hospital.
Wow.
And he's like poor guy's just like thin and bones, barely making it, barely surviving. But
it's so crazy how it affects people differently. You know, how some people get it and they're fine and, you know, they have the normal just cold or flu symptoms. And then other people like you, Charlie, are just literally knocking on death's door, you know?
And you never know.
And some of them
how it's gonna
do,
affect
and
you.
we see posts too of people saying, "Hey, pray for our family. We had a family member who died of COVID."
Right.
That's so, and it's hard not to sit there and think like, so why did I make it and not somebody else? But there's
So have you thought about that? Like, what's
of course.
what's your?
Well,
have you come to any
knowing that,
conclusion?
the wait list for an ECMO machine and an ECMO bed was so long.
Yeah.
Like me getting ECMO meant that somebody else didn't.
Didn't. Yeah.
And that's something that I'll have to, wrestle with honestly for a while. But just wanted to add too that there's something really powerful about the church coming together like that.
Yeah, I agree.
She was talking about even all over the world, churches coming together, and now they're able to help pray for each other through this Facebook page. And the Bible says, "When two or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst." And that's just speaks to the power of the church. That's what the church is supposed to do, right? The church is supposed to come together for that.
Right.
I've never seen such a beautiful example of the church coming together. Like, it was literally astounding, like how they supported us, like not only through prayers, but like financially, because he wasn't working and I wasn't really working. Like, I had a extended maternity leave, but that means I went unpaid and just take care of bills and medical bills. And then just our church and people around us providing us with meals and groceries, and people were buying like baby gifts. Like, I have diapers for for a long time.
A long time. Yeah.
Long time. I haven't to buy any diapers, but
that's awesome.
Incredible.
And Faith, you're a nurse. Just so people know a little bit about your background, you're a nurse, an oncology nurse.
Yes,
is that correct?
that's right.
Yeah. And then Charlie, you are a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so are you back to work now? Kind of where's life at now?
Yeah. Thankfully, I didn't lose any problems with my fingers or my brain function. They were actually really worried that I would have brain damage because of how long I was without oxygen.
And you were unconscious for, how long were you unconscious for?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But thankfully, no brain damage, and my fingers moved just fine. So I was able to go back to work actually pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But
that's a blessing.
Yeah, and also that I didn't lose my job. There's other people go through this, and they don't work for 3 months, and they're not able to come back to a job right away. And,
right. Right.
Yeah,
and
if
so
he was like doing a physical job, that would have been really difficult.
That too.
Yeah.
That too, yeah.
So now kind of as because I think you still are recovering somewhat from there was some nerve damage and things like that. Are you doing physical therapy, or what's kind of your recovery looking like now?
Yeah. Well, when I first got out of the hospital, I could barely walk because I was just so weak. And thankfully, I've been able to build up my strength pretty well since then. Of course, that was kind of a while ago now, but I did a lot of physical therapy and was able to, and ate a lot of food, was able to build my strength.
Because you lost 40 pounds while you were in the hospital?
I did,
wow.
yeah. And that was, for me, that was basically putting me on meat meat and bones, basically.
Yeah.
But thankfully, once I got my appetite back, I put on my weight back really fast.
You can't, 40 pounds came back.
40 pounds came back quickly. That can happen
Appetite came back.
faster than you think.
Well, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but and also I wasn't walking a whole lot either. But now, thankfully, my pain's also gotten a lot. Had a lot of pain in my legs. My pain's
Okay.
gotten a lot better. I'm starting to come off a lot of my pain meds, and I was just cleared to drive recently, so I've been running errands,
good.
and I've been really excited to drive.
I'm guessing Faith is happy about that. Like, you
Faith
can
is happy
run
about it too.
errands.
She's like, all right, go to the grocery store, and we need some milk and eggs. So,
Right, exactly. Yeah. Changing diapers, all
changing
that kind of
diapers
stuff.
as well.
Yeah.
Getting there.
Yes.
The one part of really the one part of my body that hasn't healed is I got drop foot from being in the hospital bed for so long. Your feet can get stuck, basically.
So
I
we'll
guess
kind of move like down, so like his foot kind of drags when he walks.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I can't pick it up. Actually, it's the opposite. I can push down, but I can't pull it up.
Okay.
And from what I understand, usually in the hospital they try to rotate your ankles and your wrist to prevent stuff like that from happening. But
Right.
for whatever reason, whenever they would try to do that, for me, I would get so stirred up, my
His
heart rate
vitals would go crazy.
rise, or my blood pressure
Yeah.
would rise. And
Yeah.
they said, well, it's more important that he survives than that he doesn't get drop foot.
Right,
So-
right.
which
Yeah, I think we
glad
said
that
the
it
other
is.
day when we were visiting, it was like, I think it's more important that his heart continues to beat than,
Right.
if he has
That's
this
more
foot
important.
issue. Yeah. Right. Yeah, no offense to the foot, but we need the heart to
To the
beat.
foot.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess the heart can say to the foot, "I'm more important than you."
Exactly. 100%. Yes. Yes.
Sorry, Jesus.
For sure. That's funny. So this is I usually actually open with this question, but I thought it was more important to kind of let you tell your story before I asked it. But what are words that you guys live by? Because after going through something like this, there's got to be a quote, a phrase, a scripture that really, you held on to. Maybe it's different for both of you, but what are words that you live by that you want to share with people?
Yeah. For me, my life verse has always been Jeremiah 29:11. So for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans not to harm you, but to prosper you, give you hope in a future.
Yes.
And that couldn't have been, I was going to say, how do you open with that? That was a perfect segue into what, kind of we were sharing, because that's so true. Like what I went through, like God knew the future. He had a plan through that. And
Yes.
just anything that I've gone through in life, the good, the bad, the hard, He has a plan. Like it's hard sometimes to give control, but it's also a freeing thing to give God control, because in those moments and what we went through, it was overwhelming, exhausting. Like I literally had to give it to God. Like, God, this is in your hands. Let your will be done, because I can't do this alone. And
Yes.
that has been just paramount in my life, and especially in what we went through, just trusting God through it all.
Yes. So you and I have that in common. That's also my life verse. Actually,
Love it.
so I have Faith, your name, on my
Aw,
wrist,
yes,
and I also have Jeremiah 29:11 on my other arm.
Love
So
it. Love
we
it.
have
So
that
good.
very
Tattoos
much in
my
common.
soul, right
Yeah.
there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that verse says literally, for me, I always reference that verse. I went through a lot of pretty severe panic attacks after my personal trauma, and that verse literally, I can remember waking up in the middle of the night, out of a sound sleep, having a really bad panic attack, and those words coming to me, and that literally was the thing that got me through. Like it would literally help my heart start to slow. My breathing would get back to normal. Just meditating on those words, and what you just said about there's something so freeing, just knowing like, God, this looks so bad. To me, it looks so bad, but there's a plan in it that you have, and you said it's good, so I'm just going to trust that, and it is freeing. It is. I don't understand. I don't know how I would have gotten through what I went through without God's word. It's so fundamental,
Absolutely. Completely agree.
Yeah. For me, it's God works everything out for the good of those who love Him, which I think is in Romans. And even back in Genesis, Jacob tells his brothers, what you intended for evil, God used for good.
Right.
And in our situation, what Satan used for evil, what Satan intended for evil, God used for good.
Yeah.
And even in your, I mean, kind of getting personal with your situation.
Sure.
What that man intended for evil, God wound up using for good for you. And,
100%. Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I,
Right.
and that's the thing that's so, I don't know, it's so cool to me because like if my situation wouldn't have happened, I never would have started Tattoos in My Soul. I wouldn't be talking to you guys. I probably wouldn't even know you guys. I wouldn't know your story,
Yeah.
And that is exactly right. And it is Genesis 50:20. I actually just sent that very verse to somebody like yesterday, I
There you
think.
go. Yeah.
But it's so true because when God is involved, he can take any situation that looks really, really dire. And if you just have faith and trust, and I say just, it's hard sometimes
Right.
to trust when it's really difficult. But if you can get yourself to a point where you are trusting and you are just literally giving it to him, he will turn it into something good,
Yeah.
100%.
And in the moment you don't see the good.
Right.
Because it isn't good, it's evil. And it's not supposed to be good in that moment.
Yeah.
And it may take a really long time even before God uses it for something good. It may not even be good until you're in heaven before God makes it good. But eventually God will turn into something good. Even in Isaiah, I think he says, I'm the painter making your mess a masterpiece. And for some people that mess is just things going on in their life, and for some people like us, it's something that was very evil that God's using to create a beautiful masterpiece. And that's such a powerful thing it's such a good thing that God's able to do. Even though in the moment it does not feel, you don't, sometimes it's a really long time before it's good.
Correct. Yeah. What would you guys like, because one of the reasons I like to do these podcasts is I feel the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them. Even if somebody's maybe listening to what you guys have gone through and they haven't gone through something like exactly the same, but maybe they're just relating to parts of your story and they're understanding where you're coming from. If somebody's going through like a really difficult time right now, what would be your piece of advice? What have you taken away from this very difficult situation that you can offer to somebody else who's going through something hard?
Yeah, well, for somebody who's going through a tough time, I would definitely say trust God. You got to trust the potter who's building that clay, man. And sometimes it hurts to be molded by that clay, but trust God because you never know what He might be able to do to use it. There's a lot of good that came out of my situation. I was thinking about this before this podcast, but there's 3 things in particular that I know that were good that came as a result. One is, like we said, we were able to see the church come together like never before. There's something really powerful about that, I think, that when Satan attacks, the church draws near, the church grows stronger. The second is that it was an opportunity for me to share the gospel. I mean, here I am right now on Tattoos of My Soul, being able to share the gospel because of what it went through. And even people who aren't Christians have heard of my story and have been really interested and ask questions like that to me. And I've been able to say, well, I'm really, really thankful that God pulled me through all of that, but I'm even more thankful that He saved me from my sin. And it's been a great opportunity for me to share the gospel. The third thing, actually, and even this is for people who even aren't going through a hard time, is that it made me realize how fragile my life is. And you think sometimes like, well, when I get to my deathbed, like I'm going to be able to make peace with all these things. I'm going to have time to make peace with all these things. Well, I was on my deathbed, and it really didn't happen like that. It happened so quickly. It happened so fast. I didn't even realize I was potentially on my deathbed.
Right.
I didn't have. And then I was sitting there afterwards thinking, like, man, like I should have tried to call Faith and tell her I loved her, and which I actually did, but like I should have called my mom and told her I love her, like I should have tried to like say those final goodbyes. I didn't realize I wasn't going to have time to say those final goodbyes. And good grief, you could be in a car wreck today and die in an instant.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I'm 27, I'm healthy, I'm probably going to live for a long time.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't. And you want to try to and there's things that I thought were valuable that I realized on my deathbed that I wasn't sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had made more money.
Right.
I wasn't sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had a better car. But I was sitting there thinking, man, I wish I had made more memories with my family. I wish I had called that person, or I wish I had done this thing that, bucket list things that you just wish you had done before. And I wish I had spent more time doing ministry. And I think God was using some of that to show me that I needed to value those other things more, the things that God values that I should value more.
Right. Yeah, that's actually the perfect segue, because before the podcast this morning, I went onto your Facebook page and I saw a New Year's post that you made. There's nothing like nothing like a near-death experience that gives you perspective in life. And I actually wanted to read it if you're okay with that, because I thought it was so good. You said, I hope I live in the moment for every moment I am given. If I die tomorrow, I hope the greeter at church remembers that I smiled and shook their hand and asked how they were doing. If I die tomorrow, I hope I have a client who will miss the relationship I forged with them over the years. If I die tomorrow, I hope my friends can remember a time that was rough for them and I helped cheer them up. If I die tomorrow, I hope my family will miss my sense of humor. If I die tomorrow, I hope my wife will remember our wedding and our honeymoon and our trips to amusement parks and Dave & Buster's and fancy restaurants. I hope she remembers when she cried on my shoulder. I hope she remembers the April Fool Days pranks. I hope she remembers a present I gave her on Christmas that she loved. If I die tomorrow, I hope my daughter remembers me singing to her. I hope she remembers that even though I could barely walk, I would come over to her crib just to see her look up at me and smile. I hope she remembers how much she loved it when I would hold her up so she could stand and I would tell her I was proud of her. I hope she remembers me whispering, I love you, in her ear. I hope she remembers our prayer time at night and trying to help her pat the Bible because it's true. If I die tomorrow, I hope someone remembers a time that I helped them when they needed it the most. I hope someone remembers my testimony. I hope someone remembers how I led them to Jesus. You never know what day will be your last. This is a good time to make it your resolution to make every moment count. Live in the moment. Don't waste your life chasing the wrong things. Pursue the giver of all good things. When you live your life like that, your life will have a greater impact than you ever thought it had.
Yeah.
I love that. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Brought him to tears and he wrote it.
I know.
I remember.
Hey, who wrote that? He's a pretty smart guy. Yeah. And so what I'm gathering you've taken away from this is just the value of every day. Like we get so busy and we go through life and we're just like, thinking about our to-do list of that day and, the errands we need to run or the bills we need to pay. And literally life can just pass you by. And then you have a situation like yours where it's like, wow, this may all end, in the blink of an eye. And you're encouraging people to truly be grateful for each day and to not take it for granted, which I think is so wise. At 27 years old, you already know that. That's wisdom. A lot of people don't gain that until they're much older. But you had a life situation, obviously, that
get thrown in their
exactly. You're like, well, yeah, exactly, yeah. 100%. Yeah. So I know you guys, what are you doing now? I know you're getting ready to move. There's kind of a new chapter, opening up. Faith, do you still have the Facebook group, and are you still, updating that?
It's kind of become like a prayer group. I think Charlie was kind of referencing earlier. A lot of people are sharing prayer requests of people, COVID's still out there. A lot of people are still dealing with that, and other things too, of course. So we're just kind of keeping it open for that, because he referenced earlier, where two or more are gathered, there I am among them. And so we're just, it's cool to be able to now be able to pray for those people that prayed for our family. So kind of keeping that open, and then of course like updating it. Of course there's not as many updates, because I used to update it daily, and sometimes 2 to 3 times a day. So just kind of maybe every couple of weeks, just to share what's kind of going on. But yeah, we did share a big update yesterday that we live in Tennessee right now, and this month actually we're moving to Florida, where we met. His dad has a church down there, New Day Christian Church. Okay. And so we're moving back there, so we're excited to kind of start a new adventure as a family of 3, awesome. Where our love story began.
Yeah. It'll be good to have their help with the baby, and even with me, honestly.
That's great.
And to be near the beach, and little Charity loves to swim. She loves to swim. Loves her bath time, and she's gonna grow up having a great time in Florida.
That's awesome.
And we're also optimistic and hope that we can find some great ministry opportunities there when we move down there.
God's already kind of moved. Our house is sold. Just all these things are kind of falling into place. So we definitely feel like His hand is in this. So we're just kind of excited what doors He's going to open up.
Well, I mean, He clearly already is, opening a lot of doors.
Yes.
And I think He's probably going to do that. You're going to be telling this story for the rest of your life, You really are, as I'll be telling mine. And it is an opportunity, like you said, just to show people how awesome God is, how He intervenes, how He takes something that was meant for harm and turns it for good, and then how He allows that to bless other people. Because no doubt, you were on your deathbed, but you pulling through and now sharing your story will bless people, probably in a lot of ways that you don't even ever know. Your story will touch people.
Yeah, God is still a miracle worker.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate so much you guys' time. I know we were coordinating this around I haven't even heard a peep out of little Charity. You said she was teething. She's
really
been like a
her
little
toys.
angel. Yeah. So,
She's got her moments, but she's a pretty fun, happy baby.
Yeah, so she's been great. But I'm so glad that we had this time, because like I said, I have literally followed your story through our prayer group and just seen all your updates, and it's so nice to talk to you and see you up and well. And I'm definitely going to be posting in the prayer group that we visited today, and I know a lot of people are going to be encouraged by your story.
Well, thank you so much. This was such a special opportunity.
Thank you, Molly. We're really glad we got to every opportunity I have to share my story. I'm really thankful for it. This was a pretty cool one. So thank you.
Absolutely. God bless. Prayers for, a safe move. And I hope everything, I'm a little jealous you guys are moving to Florida.
I know.
I'm in Ohio here where it's nice and cold. Yes,
we'll be taking little Charity to Disney World too, for that
there
matter.
You go.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, guys, we're good. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Great.